Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 103. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for joining me on another movie discussion where we break down and we talk about a new movie that we got to check out in theaters. Maybe it's on streaming. I'll give you my pros and cons. We'll have a nice discussion about our favorite moments and our favorite scenes. And then I'll offer a recommendation whether you should check this out in theaters or streaming, or maybe even skip it. And then at the end, a final segment where we cover whether this movie is timeless. Is it something that you could rewatch over and over again, maybe add to your movie collection, or even own it on physical media as well? Before we jump into this week's episode, though, did want to highlight episode number 102, in which I got to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Very surprised at how much I enjoyed that movie. Might be my favorite of the three Sonic movies, but go ahead and check it out. It's available on Apple Podcast. It's on Spotify as well as YouTube. Go to that comment section or to the review part of it and let me know what you thought about the episode as a whole, as well as what your thoughts are on Sonic the Hedgehog. And if you enjoy the trilogy, and if the third one was your favorite, and if it's timeless for you. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and dive into episode number 103, in which we are going to be talking about Juror number 2, directed by Clint Eastwood. Very pumped to talk about this one. I got to check out the trailers for this one during watching other types of movies, and the trailer immediately grabbed my attention. It was basically you're following Nicholas Holt's character, in which he has been summoned to jury duty. He goes and he is involved in a murder case in which a boyfriend ended up killing his girlfriend, due to some argument that they had. However, what Nicholas Holt's character ends up realizing is that as he gets to see more and more evidence presented by lawyers, he notices that he not only was there that night of the situation that happened between this couple, but also he may have been the cause of the accident. And so now he's basically having to kind of decide, well, what am I going to do? I'm part of the jury of this case, and the man that's being accused actually is innocent, and I'm the one responsible. And so as soon as I saw that, it immediately just made it on the top of my list of movies that I wanted to watch, because whenever a trailer can just hook you on the premise itself, that's all I need to know. I'm down. I want to watch it. And I really enjoy Nicholas Holt's work and different movies that he's come out in. So that immediately got my attention. So the only unfortunate part about this movie is that I actually couldn't get to watch it in theaters. For some reason, any kind of theaters that kind of came up near where I live, they didn't have it available, or the show times were just didn't fit with my schedule. So unfortunately, had to watch it in streaming, but I got to check it out. It is streaming on HBO Max. Let's go ahead and dive into the non-spoiler thoughts about Juror number 2. All right, guys, now that I got a chance to check out Juror number 2 on streaming and HBO Max, I got to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. While at the same time, I was freaking out because it was just such a scary type of a situation. And I don't mean that the movie itself was scary. It's like not horror at all, but it's really just the social situation that you're in, or really the character of Nicholas Holt is in. Because like I mentioned before on the trailer, that premise is just wild to think about. Imagine if you were on a specific jury and you're trying to basically decide whether a man is guilty of murder or not guilty. And then really you have all the facts because you're actually the one that did that action. I was just freaking out. I was anxious. I was nervous, yet I was engaged as I was watching this movie all the way through. It was incredible. It was only an hour and 50 minutes, so it was a very easy watch, but I'm really impressed at how this movie was able to kind of keep my attention going, giving that feeling of, again, you're not knowing what's going to happen to the main character, but at the same time, I'm also thinking, what the hell would I do in this situation? I feel like I would just break down. Apart from the interesting story that is playing out in front of you as you're watching this movie, there's great performances throughout by different supporting characters in the film, which adds to the legal drama and the thriller of this movie. Again, you have a lot of different types of characters, like Toni Collette comes out in this one, Chris Messina, J.K. Simmons, Leslie Bibb, so many different types of characters. And we'll talk a little bit about how that added to the film, but just wanted to call it out that not only is the story that's unfolding really great, but it's also the fact that there's so many performances that add layers to this movie as well. Again, really wish I could have seen this in theaters, but all good. The important thing is I got to check it out. Let me give you a little bit more details about the synopsis. So again, just kind of setting up the entire film for you here without spoiling too much. But we're basically following the life of Justin Kemp, who is a writer for a magazine. He is actually expecting the arrival of his first child with his wife, Allison. And so you're kind of setting up the beginning of the film of just showing how much of a family man he is, how much he cares and supports for his wife. And then he gets summoned to jury duty and he's telling his wife, you know what, I'm going to try to come up with a good excuse. That way I can get out of it and support you as we get closer and closer to the delivery date. His excuse eventually gets rejected by the judge, and he actually gets selected as the second juror of this specific case. And like I mentioned before, this case is involving a domestic abuse and a murder where the defendant in this case is named James Michael Scythe. He is basically being accused of murdering his girlfriend after a dispute at a bar. And they're basically trying to give you the facts that he is the one that committed it. And as they start telling the facts, they mention something about happening on a rainy night, happening where they found the body of Kendall, who is the girlfriend of James Michael Scythe, and the one that ended up being found dead under a bridge. And as they start telling you more of the facts, you start seeing Justin freaking out because he starts realizing that not only was he at the bar where this couple was disputing, but he also drove that night and he ended up hitting something. Now, when they start doing the flashbacks, Justin thinks that he hit a deer because he goes out to his car, he didn't see anything, he looked over the bridge, it was too dark to see, and then he also saw a sign that said deer crossing. So in his mind, when it happened, it was just a deer. He couldn't find the deer and he couldn't find really any evidence other than, just he hit something and his car was damaged. So he just ended up going back home. But that moment, he ends up like realizing that, okay, now that I'm a part of this case, I'm the one that actually hit Kendall because everything kind of lines up to him not really knowing if he actually hit a deer or if he hit Kendall. And it just starts kind of spiraling out of control for Justin as he just doesn't really know what to do since he's now a part of this case. Unbelievable setup to a movie. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything else. I want you guys to really check this movie out, but it's such a gripping story that will make you think. And again, for me, at least in my perspective, when I watch movies like this, the best thing that a movie can do is make you think about that film or the premise or something that happened after the movie's over. And that happened to me while I was watching it and even afterwards as well. So, such an amazing story and such amazing setup as well. I really enjoyed this film, guys. I highly recommend if you have an HBO Max subscription, definitely check this movie out. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience and the way it makes you think, and I think you guys will enjoy it as well. If you like legal dramas, then this is going to be right up your alley. If you don't really care about courtroom dramas and things that happen with the justice system, then this might not be your thing, but I still recommend if you have an HBO Max subscription, definitely go check this movie out. All right, those are my non spoiler thoughts. Let's dive into a little bit of the spoilers of the movie as we cover our pros and our cons about Juror number 2. Hopefully, that gave you enough time to jump out of the video if you have not seen it, because I'm going to start spoiling some stuff. So here we go. First pro for me has got to be the performances of the supporting characters. I mentioned it a little bit before, but I really loved how they added much more color to what was going on in this case. Let's start off with the lawyers that were involved. You have Toni Collette, who played Faith Kilbrew. She is a lawyer that is trying to go for the district attorney position in Georgia. And so she feels like this case is going to help her if she's able to accuse James Michael Scythe of, being guilty of this actual, case of murder against his girlfriend. And so she needs this case. And so she has the stakes of wanting to win. And then she's going up against Chris Messina's character, who he plays Eric Resnick. He's actually the defender that's trying to defend James and prove that he is not guilty of murdering his girlfriend, Kendall. And so you feel like, okay, there's going to be these lawyers that are going to hate each other. And no, they actually have a very friendly relationship. They go to bars afterwards together. They have a very much like a kind of like a sibling type of a rivalry, or, just like a nice competitive type of tension, but they're friends. They seem to have known each other from going to law school, and just again, they have this nice little relationship, this nice back and forth. So they know how to separate what they're doing. They know how to separate their work with their actual personal life, and they're still able to get along even though they're on opposing sides. And so I feel like that kind of a relationship between the lawyers really added to my enjoyment of like, hey, they both want to do the right thing with what they're given in the justice system, but sometimes they're going to have to butt heads on, hey, this person isn't guilty, this person is guilty, have you looked at all the facts? And they're just trying to prove their cases. So I feel like Chris Messina and Tony Collette provided some really great tension when they were, going through the actual case itself. And I also got to highlight the diverse group that was actually selected for the jury in this case. Not only is it Nicholas Holt, but you also have characters like J.K. Simmons. You have different characters like Cedric Yarbrough. You have, I mentioned it before, Leslie Bibb. So many different types of actors that you've seen in other movies, but they all get brought in as a jury and they all have their own perspectives. But what works so well is the jury felt authentic. Now, what I mean by that is they felt like actual people that were living their lives and wanting to go back to it. No, nobody likes jury duty. That's something I think a fact of like well, I will say there might be some people that do enjoy jury duty, but in most cases, I would say that the majority of folks feel like it's such a hassle, right? Because you're having to kind of get taken away from your job, from your family, and you're having to kind of do a type of a critical thinking type of a case that you're not normally used to. But and you felt that when you're watching the movie. You have these characters that just want to go back to their family. Let's go ahead and accuse this boyfriend that James Michael Scythe, let's just accuse him and go back. It seems like from what we were presented from all the evidence, it seems like he did it. And that's the kind of vibe that you get from most of the jury, except for Nicholas Holt, who again has to kind of play the opposing side. He has to provide like, hey, well, how do we know? And the reason he knows so much is because he's the one that actually committed the crime. And so it's a very interesting type of a dilemma. But again, every single juror that was a part of that specific case, they all added their own perspective, their own type of experiences. And it just, again, it added so much in order. And again, it added more tension to Nicholas Holt's character of Justin because he had to, in a way, prove that it wasn't James that committed this crime, but also not point to that it could have been him, right? So it's a lot of different things going on, but I feel like the supporting characters around Justin, the other jury members, they just, again, they added a lot of different types of moments and tension and emotion to just, again, make you feel like, okay, what the heck is going on? Like, how much can he keep this up? Can he not be nervous around his other jury members? So really good stuff in regards to the supporting characters of this movie. Second pro for me has got to be the feeling that this movie is almost like a reverse murder mystery, if that makes sense. When you're watching a murder mystery, typically you find out the what happened on a specific night or day. You find out who the suspects are, and you as an audience member, you're trying to figure out, okay, it might be this person, but it could be this person. What's the motive? What's the means? The opportunity? Why I mentioned that this is more of a reverse murder mystery is the fact that in this film, you immediately from the first act know who is the individual that is involved in this case. It is not James Michael Scythe. It is actually Nicholas Holt's character of Justin. He's the one that actually committed this crime. Now, it was an accident. He didn't purposely try to do it. There's not the intent, but he was a part of that specific situation, and he is the cause of why Kendall ended up getting knocked over the bridge and dying. And so you're basically given the facts already. And so now you're kind of going through the film, and now it's a mystery for the characters in the movie, not for us as the audience. We know who did it. Now we're just trying to figure out the mystery of, do the other characters in the film figure it out? And then end up finding out that no, it's actually not James Michael Scythe. It's actually Justin. Justin's the one responsible, and he should be brought to justice as well for what happened to Kendall. So all of that stuff I find very interesting. And it kind of reminds me almost like Knives Out, where in Knives Out, you're kind of given the facts of the movie, and you actually end up finding out very early that Chris Evans' character is actually the murderer. But now it's really determining, well, is he really the murderer? Or, is somebody else involved? Is there an accomplice? Oh, no, actually, wait, it is. And so I really enjoy when they're able to kind of flip that kind of a genre of murder mystery on its head and kind of give you a different perspective. But one other thing that I really enjoyed is there was also a lot of near misses where it seemed like Justin was going to get caught. There was a character of Harold played by J.K. Simmons. He was actually an ex-detective and he was a part of the jury. And he started trying to do some work on the side apart from just, doing it normally on the case. He wanted to, off hours, try to figure out what the heck happened and prove that James Michael Scythe was actually not guilty of this act. And so he starts running through different types of situations and he even pulls up papers where he sees over the last year cars that got work done on the right side, on the passenger side of their car. And you think, oh man, he's going to find out that Justin actually got some work done on his car because he thought he hit a deer. And then as soon as it comes to his car, Harold ends up telling Justin, hey, well, we can scratch off your car because we know that you didn't do it, right? And so that's like a near miss. There's another one where you have Cedric Yarborough's character of Marcus. He kind of is the one that he gives different looks to Justin as he goes along through this case. They are able to go to the actual crime scene as to where it happened, and then you can look at Marcus kind of giving these very dirty looks to Justin, almost as if he knows that something's wrong because he witnessed in the restroom that Justin was throwing up after he found out that he was involved in this case, and he just made these different types of gestures. He's kind of fidgeted, and he's also been on the opposing side since the beginning. So you start thinking, okay, does Marcus know that he's responsible? And then at the end, you end up realizing that Marcus didn't think that he was involved in any way, but he just feels like, Justin has been hiding some type of information. And then there was another great scene where Justin is at the house. They have already convicted James Michael's side that he was, actually guilty of the case. And then you hear sirens come outside of the house and you immediately think, oh man, Justin's going to get arrested. They found out that it was actually not James Michael Scythe. It actually was Justin who committed the crime. So they're coming to get him. And then he looks outside the window and the police cars go right by his house. And so all those feelings of near misses, again, for me as an audience member, it adds so much to the emotion of watching this movie. And I freaking loved it. And I think what's best on how they nailed that emotion is the ending. They actually left this film with an ambiguous ending. What ends up happening is Faith Kilbrew, played by Toni Collette, ends up finding out that Justin was actually the one that committed the crime after the conviction has been laid out by the judge. So again, James Michael Scythe ends up getting sentenced to life and he has to be in prison without parole. And then you have Faith figure out who did it and she ends up going to Justin's house after they have already had their baby for a few months. She ends up knocking on the door and Justin opens the door, sees Faith, and they just give each other such a tense look at each other. They stare at each other for a couple seconds, and then the film cuts to black, and that's how it ends. And so basically, again, it leaves the film ambiguous. It leaves it up to the audience to decide what is Justin's fate. Do you think that he gets taken away and basically gets ripped from his family? Or does Faith end up just deciding, you know what? I'm going to let you be innocent, but it's going to be on your conscience for the rest of your life that a man is innocent, James Michael Scythe, but he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So I thought it was a great way to end the film. But also what I started thinking about afterwards is I think it's an even deeper layer of what Clint Eastwood and the team were able to develop for this film, because not only are you watching Justin's story, but at the end, not only are you deciding, you're the jury now. So it's almost like the audience, we're watching all of the facts in this movie, and at the end, we are now the jury, and now we're have to basically determine with everything that we've been provided, what is your decision? Is Justin guilty or is he not guilty? Are you going to rip him away from his family, or are you going to let him just kind of live a happy life and just let him be? So I thought it was such a great conclusion to make us as the audience feel like if we're the jury, we have to use the US justice system and figure out what is appropriate with what the facts we are given. So I thought it was a genius move by Clint Eastwood and the team to, again, give us a movie about legal drama, about courtroom stuff. And then at the end, we as the audience that are watching this movie, we're actually a part of the jury because we have to basically decide the ending. Are we going to let him live his life with his family, or are we going to put him in prison? So amazing stuff. I love the way that this movie ended. And this kind of leads me into my last pro, which is I love when the movie can make you feel a certain way about a situation. Why I thought this movie was scary is because of the fact that this is a nightmare situation for me. I would hate to be involved in a situation where I hit something, I didn't know what I hit, And then come to find out a year or two later that I actually hit somebody and they ended up passing away. And now I am, in some way, I'm not in trouble, but if I was a part of the jury, how do I let this person, James Michael Scythe, how do I let them get convicted of not guilty and still walk away with, with my own family? I just cannot imagine what I would do. Like, I feel like my conscience would not let me sleep. Every night I would be thinking about just telling somebody, telling my family, telling, the judge, telling anybody of like, hey, I'm the one that did it, but it was an accident. And there was just a lot of different types of things that were going through my mind. And again, that's a pro for me. I love it when a movie can give me that type of a feeling of anxiety of like, what the hell would I do in this nightmare situation? Because I would want to tell somebody, but I also wouldn't want to lose the fact that I would never be with my family again. So a lot of good stuff. So again, a pro is just the concept of this movie and making me feel that concept after the movie finished. I freaking loved it. Moving into cons, this will be quick. I don't really have that much. Now, I got to be very clear, and I'm a broken record every time, so apologies, guys. But just because I don't have a con, just because I don't have a nitpick, does not mean that this movie is perfect. It just means that I don't have any notes at the time. I enjoyed my experience throughout. Maybe if I rewatch it, I might pick up on some things that I maybe didn't really like, or maybe some lines of dialogue that just didn't make sense. But overall, nothing bad to say about Juror number two. I thought this movie was a awesome time to watch at home. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with my favorite performance. This one is going to be an easy one for me. I'm going to give it to Nicholas Hoult as Justin Kemp. He, at the beginning of the movie, he's actually very quiet. His performance is very internal. Everything is just kind of happening through his eyes as he figures out that he has a big part to play in this case. But what's so awesome is just like the way that he's able to express emotion without saying a lot, even the way that he's handling himself with the other jury members. Again, he has to not sound like he knows exactly what happened that night, but also play it off as, hey, we can't just assume that James Michael Scythe is the one that did this just because he has a tattoo on his neck, just because he's had a reputation of being a bad person. We can't just do that. We have to look at everything. And he just kept throwing out theories and theories. So I feel like Nicholas Hoult played a lot of great stuff. And again, as the movie went on, he kept talking a little bit more about what was going on in that specific situation, and even gives off more about what happened as a backstory to his life, how he had to be an Alcoholics Anonymous, how he had a problem with drugs, and how he's changed as a person, and how, well, James Michael Scythe should be given a chance to change as well. And again, the whole performance was just really well done. Again, the first half, very much like an internal performance by Nicholas Hoult. And then by the end, he's talking a lot more. He's trying to break it down, trying to justify that it was an accident as to what he did. All of it, and the way that he expresses it with his face is just a great job by Nicholas Hoult. He was my favorite performance overall in Juror number two. And again, a lot of it was not only just the way he was speaking, but also the way that he expressed it with his eyes and his facial reactions as well. Favorite scene for me in this movie is going to be Justin talking to his wife, Allison. This scene was incredible because at this point, you find out that Allison, played by Zoe Deutsch, she figures out that Justin actually did hit something, and she's just trying to get the truth. Did you actually go down this road? This that they kept calling it Quarry Road. That's where the bridge is. And she just wanted to know the truth. And then she gets even more like upset because she finds out that Justin, who has been sober for 3 years, he went to a bar. And then she just wanted to know, did you have a drink? Did you end up drinking that night? And they just had such a passionate and a real and raw conversation between a husband and a wife. And that scene just, it was incredible. And again, going back to Nicholas Holt's performance, he had tears in his eyes. He could not say, he could not even look at his wife because of how heartbroken he was that he knew at that point that he did something that he wasn't supposed to do. But again, it wasn't his fault. It was an accident, but it's still, he was a part of this crime. So that whole scene between them was amazing, and how they were able to play it off. Again, shout out to Nicholas Hoult for his performance, but also Zoe Deutsch for, again, just showing that emotion, the fear of like, what am I going to do? We have a baby coming like that. You have to be a part of our family. So amazing stuff. Favorite shot? This one's a little bit hard. Again, this film wasn't really shot to have like, cinematic moments in that kind of a way. So I don't really have a lot of favorite shots in this. So again, I'll probably have to skip it for now. Maybe I'll rewatch it again and then I'll find a shot that, I can probably choose. But at the moment, I actually don't really have a favorite shot in this movie. All right, guys, those are my thoughts, my pros and cons about juror number two. But now it is time to decide, is juror number two timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie over and over again and add it to my rotation? This movie has potential to be a timeless movie for me. It has all the things that I enjoy. Great performances. It has a premise that just keeps me engaged as I'm watching the story. There's not a lot of lulls that happen throughout the film. It's very nicely paced, only an hour and 50 minutes. But as of today, I will say that Juror number two is not going to be a timeless movie for me. Reason being is the way that it made me feel, right? The anxiety, the nervousness. And even though it is a pro, walking away from this movie, thinking about it, I don't know if I want to keep that same feeling every time I watch that, right? And I know that movies are supposed to give us those types of experiences, those emotions. They can make you cry, they can make you laugh, they can make you very anxious in that kind of a way. But once again, I don't know if I want to keep putting that in my mind of like, what the heck would I do? What the heck would I do? What if I was involved in this kind of a situation? Again, I left the movie feeling that way. And even though it was a very cool feeling, I don't know if I want to repeat that every single time I watch it. So I know it's a very weird type of a reason as to why. Again, that's just my thoughts. I still would highly recommend you guys check this movie out. It's still worth a watch. And I think this is a movie that everyone should at least watch once, just because of the fact that it puts you in a very particular situation where almost you're a jury member. But again, not timeless for me as of today. What about you guys, though? What are your thoughts about Juror number two? Have you had a chance to check it out? If you have, let me know down below in the comments of YouTube or leave a review down on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so that we can interact and talk about this movie that was directed by Clint Eastwood. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening all the way through to my thoughts about Juror number two. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 103 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we talk about a new film and decide whether it is timeless after one viewing. All right, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. It's almost Christmas, so for all those that celebrate happy holidays, enjoy the time with family and friends, and we'll talk soon. Take care.